The woman at the counter, the afternoon sun spilled through the glass windows of a small grocery store in downtown Los Angeles. It was one of those modest places, the kind people walked past without noticing, a quiet spot where shelves leaned heavy, with canned food, bread, and milk. Behind the counter stood an elderly woman, her back bent with age, her hands moving slowly but steadily as she counted change for a customer. Her hair was silver, her eyes tired yet kind, and though her uniform looked worn from years of use, she carried herself with dignity. Most people who came in and out never really looked at her, never wondered about the life she had lived, the sacrifices she had made, the quiet strength that held her up each day. But on this day, something unexpected happened. The door opened, the small bell above it chiming gently, and a tall man in simple clothes stepped inside. He wore black boots, a plain shirt, and a quiet expression. Customers hardly noticed him at first, but when he looked up, his gaze fixed on the woman behind the counter, and in that moment, time seemed to stop. It was Keanu Reeves. For years, people had whispered about his humility, about the way he rode the subway, spoke to strangers, and gave generously without needing recognition. But as he stood there, his heart caught in his chest, none of that mattered, because in front of him, at 85 years old, was the woman who had once held him as a child, the woman who had wiped his tears when the world felt too heavy, the woman who had been his nanny when his mother worked endless hours to keep their small family afloat. Her name was Maria. Keanu froze, unsure if his eyes were playing tricks. Could it truly be her after all these years? Her hands were thinner now, her frame smaller, but the gentle patience in her movements, the kindness in her eyes. It was the same. He stepped closer, his voice catching slightly as he whispered, "Maria." The old woman looked up, confusion flickering across her face. For a moment she studied him, and then her eyes widened. Recognition dawned, followed by a flood of emotion. "Keanu?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Tears stung his eyes as he nodded, his throat tight. "It's me. It's been so long." The customers nearby paused, curious, sensing something important unfolding before them. Maria's lips trembled into a smile, though her eyes shone with unshed tears. "My boy," she said softly. "You grew taller, but your eyes, they are the same." Keanu stepped forward, and for a moment, he was not the man the world admired, not the actor who carried both fame and sorrow. He was simply a boy again, reunited with the woman who had given him love when he needed it most. But as his joy grew, so did his pain. Because the truth was clear, she was still working. At 85, she was still behind a counter, still counting coins, still standing on weary legs when she should have been resting in peace and comfort. Keanu's chest tightened with anger and sorrow. He wanted to shout, to ask why life had been so unkind to her. But instead, he took a deep breath, remembering what Maria had always taught him as a child. That anger burns, but kindness heals. "Why are you here, Maria?" he asked softly, though his voice shook with emotion. She lowered her eyes, embarrassed. "Life does not give everyone the same blessings, my dear," she said gently. "I never married, never had children. My savings, they were not enough. So I keep working. It keeps me alive. It keeps me moving." Her words cut into him like glass. He wanted to argue, to tell her it was wrong, that she deserved more than this. But he saw the quiet pride in her, the resilience that refused to let hardship break her spirit. Customers continued to pass by, some whispering, some too caught in their own lives to care. But Keanu stood rooted, his heart pounding with a decision forming inside him. He could not let this stand. The reunion was not a coincidence. It was a call, a reminder of the debt he carried, not in money, but in love. "Maria," he said firmly, his voice low but filled with promise, "this ends today. You will not work another shift behind this counter. I will make sure of it." Her eyes widened, her lips parting in shock. "Keanu, no, please. I do not want pity." He shook his head, tears slipping free. "It's not pity. It's gratitude. You gave me your time, your care, your heart when I had so little. Now it's my turn to give back." The room grew quiet as though even the walls were listening. The other customers stopped, realizing they were witnessing something rare, something real. But Maria shook her head stubbornly. "I do not need saving," she said, though her voice trembled. "I need dignity. I need to stand on my own 2 feet." And in that moment, Keanu realized the truth. This would not be simple. Maria's pride, her strength, her resilience, they would not let her accept help easily. The road ahead would be filled with conflict, resistance, and unexpected twists. Because this was not just about money. It was about healing old wounds, about finding balance between giving and receiving, about honoring a woman who had given everything and asked for nothing in return. And so, as Keanu stood in that small grocery store, his heart torn between joy and sorrow, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning of a story that would change them both. The weight of pride. The bell above the door chimed again as another customer entered, but Keanu barely noticed. He was still standing across from Maria, his chest heavy with the sight of her tired hands and trembling shoulders. He remembered those same hands holding him steady when he was a boy, lifting him up when the world felt unkind. And now, decades later, those same hands were working the register in a small grocery store, as if time had refused to grant her rest. "You don't have to do this anymore," Keanu said softly, his voice low but firm. "Not one more day. You gave me so much when I had nothing. Let me return that love to you." Maria shook her head, her silver hair brushing her cheeks as her eyes filled with quiet determination. "No, Keanu," she whispered. "I don't want to be anyone's burden. I would rather stand here every day than feel like I'm being carried. I raised you to be strong, not to carry me." Her words struck him deeply. He wanted to shout, to tell her that she had carried him more than anyone ever had, that her strength was the reason he had survived so much pain and loneliness, but he could see the wall of pride around her heart, the pride that had kept her standing all these years. The cashier beside her, a younger girl who had been silently listening, leaned closer and whispered, "Sir, she works double shifts. Sometimes, she skips lunch to make sure others eat first. We all tell her to rest, but she never listens. She says she cannot stop." Keanu's chest tightened, his jaw clenching. "She deserves better," he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. Maria looked at him sharply, as if sensing his thoughts. "Do not make decisions for me, my boy," she said. "If you truly love me, then respect my choice." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she handed change to the next customer. Keanu noticed and his heart ached. She was strong, yes, but strength had its limits. He thought of the years he had spent building his life, the movies, the stages, the fame that had brought him fortune. But none of it would have mattered if not for the foundation she had given him when he was small. She had been there when he cried at night, when he doubted himself, when the world seemed too big and too cruel. And now she was standing behind a counter, alone. "Maria," he said quietly, "you are not a burden. You are my family. You gave me love when I had none. Don't push me away now." Her eyes softened for a moment, and for the first time, she looked tired. Not just tired from work, but tired from a lifetime of carrying everything on her own shoulders. Still, she shook her head. "I cannot let you give up your life for me," she whispered. Keanu smiled faintly, though there was sadness in it. "You don't understand," he said. "Helping you is not giving up my life. It is honoring it. You are part of me, Maria. I would not be here if not for you." The girl at the counter watched silently, tears in her eyes. Other customers began to notice too, their curiosity turning into quiet respect as they realized something important was unfolding before them. But Maria stood firm, her pride as unshakable as ever. "If you truly wish to help me," she said, slowly, "then help me keep my dignity. Do not take away my work. Do not take away the little strength I have left." Her words left Keanu torn. He wanted to lift her burden completely, but he knew forcing his will would only wound her heart, and so he made a silent promise. If she would not allow him to take her away from this life tonight, then he would find another way, a way that honored her pride, her dignity, and her strength. He would find a way to give back without making her feel small. And deep in his chest, he felt something stir, a resolve as strong as steel. But what he did not know was that this journey would not only test his love for Maria, it would also test the very core of who he was, bringing unexpected challenges, hidden truths, and a twist that would change everything. The story of the boy and his nanny was far from over. It was only beginning to unfold. The hidden struggles that night, Keanu could not sleep. He sat in his apartment with the city lights glowing outside the window, but his mind was far away, back at the small grocery store. He kept seeing Maria's trembling hands, hearing her, voice filled with both love and stubborn pride. He poured himself a cup of tea and sat at the table, remembering the days when Maria had cared for him as a child. He remembered how she would hum lullabies when the nights felt too long, how she cooked small meals from almost nothing, how she made him feel safe when the world outside seemed too heavy. And now she was 85, still standing behind a counter carrying bags, counting coins. It tore him apart. The next morning he decided to return to the grocery store. When he entered, Maria was there again, arranging small boxes on the shelf behind her. She looked surprised, but not displeased, to see him. "You came back," she said softly. "Of course I did," Keanu replied, stepping closer. "I wanted to see you again." She smiled faintly, though her eyes were tired. "You always were persistent," she said. As they spoke, the younger cashier from before approached hesitantly. "Mr. Reeves," she whispered, "please don't be upset, but there are things Maria doesn't tell anyone." Maria frowned, clearly embarrassed. "Don't, child," she said. "I don't need him worrying more than he already does." But the girl shook her head, her voice firm. "He should know." She looked at Keanu, her voice dropping. "Maria works not only here. After this shift, she cleans offices at night. Sometimes she takes jobs walking dogs in the morning too. She hardly rests. She says she must keep going because she has debts. Old medical bills, rent increases, she hides it from people because she doesn't want pity." Keanu felt his chest tighten painfully. "Maria," he whispered, "is this true?" The old woman lowered her eyes, her hands trembling. "Life is expensive, my boy," she admitted quietly. "Sometimes strength is not a choice, it is survival." Tears burned his eyes. He wanted to hold her, to promise her that she would never suffer again, but he could see the pride in her shoulders even as they sagged with exhaustion. She was too proud to accept charity, too strong to beg for help, too dignified to allow herself to be seen as weak. Keanu took a deep breath. "Then let me help you in a way that honors your pride," he said softly. "Let me create something for you. Not pity, but purpose. Not charity, but respect." Maria looked at him with confusion, but before she could respond, a man entered the store. He was tall, sharply dressed, his eyes cold. He walked straight to the counter, slapping a paper down in front of Maria. "You're behind on rent again," he said harshly. "One more month like this and you'll lose your apartment." The words sliced through the room like a knife. Maria's hands shook as she picked up the paper, her face pale. Keanu stepped forward, his voice firm but calm. "That will not happen," he said. The man looked at him, sneering. "And who are you?" "Someone who doesn't take kindly to threats," Keanu replied, his eyes steady. The landlord laughed coldly. "If she can't pay, she's out. It's that simple." Keanu's jaw tightened, but he did not raise his voice. Instead, he turned to Maria. "You will not lose your home, I promise you that." Maria's eyes filled with tears, torn between fear and the stubbornness of her pride. "Please," she whispered, "don't make promises you cannot keep." But Keanu meant every word. He knew in his heart that he would fight for her no matter the cost. What he did not know was that this fight would reveal secrets he never expected. Secrets about Maria's past and about his own heart. secrets that would turn this journey into something far more powerful than he could have imagined. The promise, the paper on the counter trembled in Maria's hands. The landlord's words still hung in the air like a shadow, pressing heavy against her chest. 85 years of strength, 85 years of standing tall, and yet here she was, threatened with losing the small home that had become her last piece of safety. Keanu watched her closely, his jaw set. He had played many roles in his life, but at this moment, he was not an actor, not a man of fame, not even the child she once cared for. He was simply family, and family does not turn away. "How much is it?" Keanu asked quietly, his voice steady. The landlord smirked, folding his arms. 3 months behind with late fees over 5,000, and next month's is due soon. She won't make it. Maria's face burned with shame. "Keanu, don't," she started, but he raised a hand gently, silencing her. His eyes stayed fixed on the landlord. "She will not be put out," he said firmly. "I'll take care of it." The landlord gave a short laugh, dismissing his words. "People say that all the time. Unless you've got cash today, nothing changes." Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He didn't count, didn't hesitate. He laid bills on the counter until the landlord's eyes widened. "Consider it covered," Keanu said simply. The landlord blinked, stunned. "Who exactly are you?" "Someone who doesn't forget the people who raised him," Keanu replied, his voice calm but sharp with meaning. The landlord gathered the money quickly, muttering something under his breath before storming out. The bell above the door clanging loudly in his wake. Silence filled the store. Maria stared at the counter, her hands trembling. Finally, she looked up at Keanu, her eyes shining with tears. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "I had to," he answered softly. "You shouldn't be fighting these battles alone." But Maria shook her head, her pride still biting. "I told you before I don't want to feel like a burden. I've worked my whole life to stand on my own. If you take that from me, then what am I?" Keanu stepped closer, his voice gentle but strong. "You are Maria. You are the woman who gave a lonely child love when the world was cold. You are the one who shaped me, who showed me kindness when I needed it most. Paying your rent does not erase your strength, it honors it. Don't you see? This is not me carrying you. This is me walking beside you, the way you walked beside me." Tears slipped down Maria's face. She covered her mouth with her hand, her body shaking as memories returned. Memories of the little boy who used to cling to her hand, who cried when his world felt too big, who looked at her like she was the only safe place he had. And now that boy had grown into a man who stood before her, strong, steady, unshaken, offering her the same safety she once gave him. The younger cashier at the store wiped her own tears, whispering to herself, "I've never seen anything like this." Maria finally lowered her hand, her voice breaking. "You were always stubborn, my boy. Always determined to give more than you had. I see that hasn't changed." Keanu smiled faintly. "I learned it from you." For a long moment they stood, there in silence, their hearts connected across decades of love, sacrifice, and resilience. But deep down, Keanu knew this was only the surface of Maria's struggles. Debts were one thing, but 85 years of working had left scars that money alone could not heal. Her pride was strong, but her body was fragile, and her spirit carried burdens she had never spoken aloud. And so, as he walked her home later, that evening guiding her carefully along the quiet streets, he made himself another silent promise. He would not stop with paying her rent. He would find a way to give her peace, to honor her strength without breaking her pride. But what he didn't know was that Maria carried a secret of her own, a truth she had hidden for decades, one that would change everything once it came to light. The secret revealed. The night air was cool as Keanu walked beside Maria, his hand gently steadying her when the pavement grew uneven. The streets were quiet, lined with old lamps that cast golden circles of light. Maria's small apartment was only a few blocks away, but each step felt heavy, as though both of them carried more than just their bodies. When they reached her building, a modest place with peeling paint and creaking stairs, Maria fumbled for her keys. Her hands shook slightly, but she forced a smile. It's not much, she said softly, but it's home. Keanu looked around, his heart aching. She deserved better. After everything she had given him, she deserved comfort, peace. Not a home where the walls whispered of age and struggle. Inside, the apartment was simple but clean. Photographs lined a small shelf. Black and white pictures of her younger days and even one of Keanu as a boy, sitting at a kitchen table smiling with crumbs on his face. He picked it up, his chest tightening. You kept this? Maria's eyes softened. Of course, you were my boy. You always will be. For a moment, silence settled between them, filled with memories too deep for words. But Keanu sensed something else, something she was holding back. He set the picture down and turned to her. Maria, he said gently, there's more, isn't there? More than rent, more than work. You're hiding something. She froze, her eyes dropping to the floor. For years she had carried it alone, believing no one needed to know. But now, standing in front of the boy she had once raised, she felt the truth pressing against her chest, too heavy to keep locked inside. Finally, she sat down slowly in her worn armchair and whispered, There is something, yes. Keanu knelt beside her, his hand resting on hers. Tell me. Her voice trembled. Years ago, when you were still small, I had dreams. I wanted to open a small daycare, a place for children who had no one. A place where they would be safe, where they would feel loved. I even saved for it. But then your family needed me more, and later life grew harder. The money disappeared with medical bills and rent. The dream, it never happened. Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed steady. I never told anyone because dreams are fragile things. Once broken, they are too painful to speak of. Keanu's throat tightened. You gave up your dream for me, he whispered. She shook her head firmly. No, I gave up nothing. I chose love. And I would do it again. The words cut deep into his heart. She had sacrificed everything, her time, her youth, her dreams, just to give him love when he needed it most. But Keanu's gaze grew stronger, filled with quiet determination. Then it's not over, he said firmly. Dreams don't have to die because time has passed. Maria, if this is what you always wanted, then we can still make it happen. She laughed softly, shaking her head. I am 85, my boy. I don't have the strength for dreams anymore. But Keanu held her hand tighter. Then let me carry it with you. You gave me love when I had nothing. Let me give you back your dream now. Not pity, not charity. A gift of gratitude. Maria looked at him, her lips trembling. But why, Keanu? Why go so far? His eyes filled with tears. Because without you, I wouldn't have survived. Because you taught me kindness when I could have grown bitter. Because you showed me love when the world was cold. Every good part of me exists because of you. If I don't honor your dream, then I am dishonoring everything you gave me. Her tears finally fell, her body shaking as years of silence broke apart. For the first time, she allowed herself to be seen, not just as strong, but as human, with dreams and regrets like anyone else. Keanu leaned closer, his voice soft but filled with fire. We will build it together, Maria. A place for children. A place with your name. Your story will not end here behind a counter. It will live on in every child who finds safety in your dream. Maria covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. Her pride had always kept her from accepting help. But this was different. This was not pity. This was legacy. And in that moment, something shifted inside her. For the first time in decades, Maria allowed herself to hope again. But neither of them knew that making this dream real would not be simple. There were obstacles ahead, enemies of the past who would rise, and sacrifices yet to come. The journey was only growing harder, and the greatest test of all still waited for them. The dream reborn. The next weeks moved like a storm. Keanu poured his time and energy into Maria's forgotten dream, speaking with architects, searching for land, and making calls to people who could help. Every night, he returned to her small apartment, updating her with plans, sketches, and promises. At first, Maria resisted, saying she was too old, that dreams were for the young, but slowly, as she saw the fire in his eyes, her heart began to soften. The city was not kind to such ideas. Permits, approvals, endless red tape stood in their way. People doubted. Some even mocked the idea of an 85-year-old woman starting something new. But Keanu's determination never wavered. "If the world says no," he told her, "then we will keep asking until it says yes." Maria, who had spent years swallowing disappointment, began to believe again. She sat at her table late at night sketching small notes for how she wanted the daycare to feel. "There should be a corner for reading," she told him. "Children should hear stories every day. And there must be music, soft music, to make them feel safe." Her voice would tremble, but her eyes shone with life each time she spoke of it. As weeks turned into months, the dream began to take shape. A modest building was found in a quiet neighborhood, and workers moved in to repair its walls and paint its rooms. Keanu made sure every brick, every color, every piece of furniture reflected Maria's heart. The day it opened, sunlight poured through wide windows, shining on shelves filled with books, toys, and tiny chairs. On the wall near the entrance hung a small plaque, "Maria's House of Hope." Maria stood at the doorway, leaning on her cane, tears streaming down her face. As children filled the room, their laughter bouncing off the fresh paint, she touched the plaque gently, her lips trembling. "My dream," she whispered, "after all these years." Keanu stood beside her, his arms steady around her shoulders. "Not just your dream," he said softly, "your gift to the world." Parents who brought their children thanked her, some with tears in their eyes. They spoke of how rare it was to find a place filled with such warmth. Volunteers offered to help, teachers applied eagerly, and the community embraced the daycare as if it had always been waiting for it. For Maria, it was more than a building. It was proof that her life had not been forgotten, that her love had not gone unnoticed, that even at 85 her story was still being written. That evening, after the children had gone and the rooms grew quiet, she sat in one of the small chairs, her hand holding Keanu's. "My boy," she said softly, "I thought I had reached the end of my road. I thought all I had left was work and struggle. But you gave me back more than I dreamed. You gave me back myself." Keanu's eyes filled with tears. "You gave me love when I had nothing. Now it's my turn to give it back. This is not the end, Maria. This is a new beginning." She smiled through her tears, her face glowing with peace. "Then let this place be our promise, that kindness never fades, that love never grows old, and that even forgotten dreams can rise again." Outside, the lights of the city sparkled, but inside the small building, something brighter lived. It was the laughter of children, the warmth of legacy, and the quiet truth that humility, resilience, and kindness will always outshine pride and cruelty. And as Keanu walked Maria home that night, guiding her gently under the stars, he knew one thing with certainty. The love she had once given him as a child had returned, multiplied, reborn into something that would live far beyond them both.